to Deep Sleep Stories. Thank you to everyone who's been listening. If these stories help you relax or fall asleep, a short review, comment, or sharing the podcast with someone who might benefit is a simple and meaningful way to support the show so that we may continue to offer it for free. Now, take a slow, gentle breath and let's begin tonight's story.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, where the night is unhurried and your only task is to rest. Tonight's story is about a quiet forest glade where, beneath moonlight, mushrooms gather for a slow and secret midnight waltz. Settle into a comfortable position, letting your shoulders drop as if they've been waiting all day to soften. Allow your jaw to loosen, your tongue to rest, your forehead to smooth. If it helps, imagine the room around you as a gentle shelter, dim, calm, and kind, holding you without asking anything in return. Breathe in slowly, as though you're sipping warm air from a cup, and breathe out, letting the day pour away like water sliding over smooth stones. In and out. Each breath is a quiet step down a staircase deeper into ease. Picture a forest at the edge of midnight, cool and velvet dark, laced with silver. The trees stand like old friends, their leaves barely moving, their shadows soft rather than sharp. Somewhere, a stream whispers to itself. Somewhere, an owl turns its head and decides everything is peaceful enough to remain silent. With every exhale, you drift closer to that gentle place. And as you do, the story begins to carry you, the way a slow tide carries a leaf, without effort, without hurry. Only onward, only down, into sleep. In that forest, not far from where the stream curls through ferns, there was a small path that few ever noticed. It wasn't made by boots or wheels. It was made by time, by rabbits and deer, by wind and rain, by the simple, repeated act of passing through. At the end of this path, tucked behind a screen of mossy stones and a curtain of drooping branches, lay a glade that belonged to Moonlight. It was round and gentle, like a cupped palm. The ground was soft with needles and fallen leaves, and here and there, pale flowers opened their faces to the night as if they had learned a secret about darkness, that it could be beautiful. The trees around the glade leaned inward, not to crowd it, but to protect it. Their trunks were wide and patient, their bark textured like old stories. High above, the canopy formed a woven roof of leaves and thin branches, and through the gaps, the moon shone down in slow beams, laying silver ribbons across the earth. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that isn't empty but full of the sigh of distant water, full of the soft creak of wood, full of tiny lives settling in for the night, mice snug in their burrows, beetles tucked under bark, moths folding their wings like prayer. And in the heart of the glade, clustered like a little village, grew the mushrooms. They were not all the same. Some were tall and slender, their stems pale as candle wax, their caps like small umbrellas. Some were squat and sturdy, with thick bases and rounded tops. Some were speckled, as though someone had brushed them with starlight. Some were smooth and satin dull. The color of warm earth. There were mushrooms that glowed faintly in the dark, just enough to make a small halo on the ground around them. Others held the moonlight on their caps, reflecting it like tiny mirrors. When the breeze moved through, it seemed as if they whispered to one another, though no one could have said what language they spoke. If a curious wanderer had come upon them in daylight, they might have seen only mushrooms, simple and still. They might have thought the glade was merely pretty. Pleasant moss, gentle stones, a nice place to rest. But the glade's true nature belonged to night, and the mushroom's true life, if it could be called life in the way humans mean it, awakened when the world grew quiet enough to listen. The forest had always been a place of rhythms, morning bird song and evening hush, rain tapping leaves and sun drying bark, seasons turning like pages, the mushrooms rooted in a hidden web beneath the soil felt every rhythm like music. They knew when the air became cooler, when the dew began to gather. They knew when the moon rose and the shadows softened. On this particular night, the moon climbed high and round as though it had been polished for a special occasion. Clouds drifted far away, leaving the sky clear and deep. The stars seemed brighter, not sharp, but tender, like candle flames seen through gauze. A hush settled over the glade, deeper than usual, as if the forest itself had leaned in to watch. Beneath the mushrooms, beneath the leaves and needles, beneath the gentle skin of the earth, the mycelium stirred. A delicate network of threads, fine as breath, spread out in every direction, connecting roots to roots, stone to soil, mushroom to mushroom. It was an ancient web, older than many of the trees, older than the path that led to the glade. Along those threads traveled a kind of conversation. Not words exactly, more like feelings, gentle pulses of knowing, a sense of readiness, of timing. The tallest mushroom in the cluster, an elegant one with a cap that curved like a brim, tilted ever so slightly as if it were listening. Then another leaned toward it, then another. A moment passed, slow as syrup. And then, as though an unseen conductor had lifted a hand, the mushrooms began to move. Not quickly, not dramatically. The movement was subtle, like the first sway of grass when wind arrives. Caps shifted, stems flexed. They did not uproot themselves. They did not step like animals. Instead, they swayed and pivoted from where they grew, turning and leaning in patterns that seemed impossibly graceful for something so quiet and grounded. The moonlight streamed down as if it had been waiting for this. It caught on the smooth curve of caps and the delicate edges of gills. Shadows drew soft circles around their bases, and those circles seemed to widen and narrow like slow breaths. In the center of the cluster, where the soil was darkest and richest, a ring of tiny mushrooms, button small, began to glow. Their light was faint, a soft blue-green, like distant sea light. It pulsed gently, not flashing, just brightening and dimming in an easy rhythm. A waltz. If a waltz could be made of light and sway, A dance in 3 slow beats. Lean, pause, return. Lean, pause, return. Farther out, near the edge of the glade, a patch of pale mushrooms, broad-capped and calm, joined the rhythm. They tilted toward the center, then away, as if acknowledging something older than themselves. The forest listened. The stream kept whispering. A branch, heavy with moss, dipped slightly and then settled. The night held its breath, not out of fear, but out of reverence. If someone had been there, someone quiet enough, patient enough, they might have felt it. Not seen it clearly, perhaps, because human eyes are easily fooled by darkness, but felt it in the skin like a gentle vibration. The sense of being near something tender and secret. In the glade, the mushroom's midnight waltz continued, slow and mesmerizing. Above them, the trees made a soft frame, their leaves shifting in a breeze that seemed to move in time with the dance. Now and then, a single leaf let go and spiraled down, turning in the moonlight as if it, too, wanted to join. The leaf would drift and drift and finally land on the earth with no sound at all. It was the kind of night that made even time feel sleepy. Minutes wandered, seconds stretched like a cat in warm light. Not far away, deeper in the forest, a small fox moved between the trees. Its paws made almost no sound. It paused, nose lifted, tasting the air. The fox had its own errands, its own quiet intentions. Yet tonight, it found itself drawn toward the glade without quite deciding to go there. The scent in the air was different, earthier, sweet in a way that reminded the fox of rain and roots. There was also something else, something that didn't have a scent so much as a feeling, a gentle tug like curiosity wrapped in calm. The fox approached, slow and careful, stepping around ferns and fallen branches. It stopped at the edge of the glade where the ground shifted from rough forest floor to soft needle carpet. The fox did not enter immediately. Animals often know when a place is not theirs to claim. They know when a place belongs to a kind of magic that is best observed respectfully. So the fox sat, tail curled around its paws, and watched. In the moonlight, the fox's eyes reflected faint gold. Its ears flicked once, catching the stream's whisper, the distant sigh of wind. But its gaze stayed on the mushrooms. They swayed, as if an invisible melody threaded through them. The tiny glowing ones in the center pulsed their light in steady cycles, and the larger mushrooms responded, turning and leaning as if the light were calling the steps. The fox felt its breathing slow without thinking. Its muscles loosened. The forest's hush seeped into its bones like warmth. And as the dance continued, something else began to happen. On the far side of the glade, where the stones were thick with moss, a cluster of mushrooms that had been dim and quiet began to brighten. Their caps had a faint blush, like a hint of rose caught in pale cream. As they brightened, a soft shimmer spread across the moss nearby, as though the moss itself had decided to glow. The shimmer wasn't bright. It was gentle, like moonlight on still water. It made the edges of stones look smoother, the shadows softer. From the soil, from the hidden mycelium, came a deeper pulse, slower than the tiny lights. It was as though the earth were humming and the mushrooms were answering. The fox blinked once, sleepy now. The glade seemed to grow larger in its awareness, more spacious, as if the dance was opening an unseen door. In the center, the tiniest mushrooms lifted their caps a little higher, their glow steadied. The rhythm became clearer, more confident, still slow, still soothing. And then, just beyond the cluster, a small circle in the leaf litter began to clear itself. It wasn't dramatic. The leaves simply shifted, sliding an inch at a time as though guided by a careful hand. Needles moved aside. The ground beneath, dark soil flecked with pale threads, became visible. The fox's ears perked. The mushrooms leaned toward that clearing, as if greeting it. The glow in the center softened, then brightened again, like a gentle invitation. And from that small, cleared circle, something rose. At first it looked like mist, a pale curl of fog lifting from the soil. But it was not cold fog. It was warm, the color of milk in moonlight. It rose slowly, gathering itself into a shape that was almost a figure, though never sharply defined. It might have been the spirit of the glade if one believed in such things. Or it might have been the shared dream of the mushrooms. Given form for a while, it might have been nothing more than the way moonlight and sleep can trick the eyes. Yet the fox watching did not feel fear, only a deeper calm, as if the air itself were stroking its fur. The pale shape drifted in a slow circle above the cleared soil. As it moved, it seemed to draw the mushroom's attention, and their waltz adjusted to include it, like dancers welcoming a new partner into the pattern. The mist shape leaned toward one mushroom, then another, as if offering a silent blessing. Wherever it hovered, the mushroom's caps shone a little brighter, their movements becoming even more fluid. The forest around the glade felt as though it had softened. Even the trees seemed to sway faintly, though there was little wind. The stream's whisper became a steady hush, like a lullaby played far away. The fox lowered its head slightly, eyelids heavy. It was not asleep yet, but it was close. In the presence of the dance, the fox's thoughts became simple: warmth, safety, stillness. Somewhere, a little owl shifted on a branch and tucked its head under a wing, deciding this was a good night to doze. Somewhere, a deer paused mid-step and stood quietly for a moment, longer than usual, as if listening to something only it could hear. The mushrooms continued. Lean, pause, return. The mist shape circled. The tiny lights pulsed. Everything repeated, and in the repeating, there was comfort. Time moved differently in the glade. It no longer marched. It drifted. It floated like a feather, falling so slowly it could almost be rising. As the dance went on, the glade began to fill with a fragrance that was hard to name. It was the scent of damp soil and crushed leaves, yes, but also something sweeter, like the memory of violets, like the faintest trace of honey in warm tea. It wasn't strong. It was a suggestion, a whisper of scent that made the breath feel softer. The fox breathed it in and sighed. The mist shape seemed to notice. It drifted toward the fox, not crossing the boundary of the glade, but hovering near the edge, respectful of the fox's space. The fox's eyes half closed. It did not move away. The mist shape swirled gently as if exhaling. The air between the fox and the mushrooms shimmered, and for a moment the fox seemed to see something more than mushrooms swaying. It seemed to see a ballroom made of roots and moonlight. It seemed to see the mushrooms as tall dancers in cloaks, their caps like soft hats, their stems like slender bodies. The glade became a round floor of polished earth, and the mossy stones became seats for unseen guests. The fox did not question it. In dreams, one rarely questions. The fox simply watched, calm and open. In that dream vision, the mushroom's waltz had a melody. It was not loud. It was not even made of sound exactly. It was made of the feeling of 3 slow steps. It was made of the gentle rise and fall of light. The mushrooms turned toward one another, leaning as if bowing, then swaying away, then returning again. Their gills, usually hidden, caught the moonlight like delicate lace. In the center, the tiniest mushrooms glowed like a small orchestra, their pulses steady and patient. The mist shape drifted among them like a conductor, guiding nothing forcefully, only encouraging what was already there. Above, the stars seemed to blink more slowly, as if they too were becoming sleepy. The fox's breathing grew deeper. Its chest rose and fell in a rhythm that matched the waltz. And soon the fox's mind slipped into a quieter place. It still watched, but now it watched through a veil of drowsiness, where everything was softer and kinder. In the forest, a gentle breeze wandered in, just enough to stir the ferns at the glade's edge. The ferns bowed and lifted, like they were learning the dance. A single firefly drifted into the clearing, its light blinking lazily. It hovered above the mushrooms for a moment, then settled on a cap that glowed faintly as if it had found a safe landing place. The firefly's light blinked once more, then remained steady. Tiny lantern. The mushrooms did not mind. Their dance did not break. If anything, the new light seemed to be welcomed, folded into the pattern. Far beneath the soil, the mycelium carried messages: ease, steadiness, belonging. The threads connected not just mushrooms to mushrooms, but roots to roots, tree to tree, stone to soil. The forest was a community of quiet connections, and tonight, those connections hummed with gentle harmony. If there had been a human listener nearby, someone lying on a bed, eyes closed, breath slow, they might have felt something too, a sense that the world continues to hold its own soft ceremonies, even when no one watches. A a sense that the night is not empty but full of peaceful rituals. The mushrooms waltzed for no audience. They waltzed because the moon rose, because the forest grew quiet, because the earth's hidden web sang its slow song, and because, perhaps, there are certain things that must be done simply to keep the world tender. The mist shape lifted slightly, rising higher above the cleared soil. It spread out, thinning into a veil, and as it did, the light in the glade changed. Moonbeams seemed to multiply as if the veil were catching them and scattering them gently. The glade became a bowl of silver and pale green glow, a place that looked like it had been painted in soft watercolors. The fox's eyes closed fully for a moment. When they opened again, they were even heavier. At the edge of the glade, a rabbit appeared, small and round, nose twitching. It hopped forward a few steps, then stopped, sensing the same thing the fox had sensed, a quiet magic, a softness that asked for stillness. The rabbit sat, paws tucked under its body, and watched from a safe distance. The fox did not chase it. Tonight, the fox was not hungry. Tonight, the fox was full of calm. A small bird, half asleep, fluttered down to a low branch and settled, head tucked. It did not sing. It only rested. The mushrooms continued their slow, endless turning, like hands on a clock that had decided to become a lullaby instead of a measure. Lean, pause, return, lean, pause, return. Each movement was a gentle reminder that nothing needed to be rushed, that the night was wide enough for everything to unfold in its own time. The mist shape drifted toward the center again, gathering itself slightly, becoming more defined, still not sharp, but more present. It hovered above the glowing ring of tiny mushrooms and seemed to hum. The hum was not a sound, yet it was felt. It ran through the soil, through the mushrooms, through the moss, and up into the trees. It traveled in the air, touching the fox's whiskers, the rabbit's ears, the bird's feathers. It was a hum of rest. As the hum spread, the mushrooms' glow softened. Their waltz slowed even more, as if the dance itself were beginning to wind down. The fox's head lowered until its chin rested on its paws. The rabbit's eyelids drooped. The bird's breathing became slow and steady. The glade seemed to sigh. Somewhere beyond, the forest remained watchful. But here within this circle of moonlight and mushrooms, the night became a cradle. The mist shape began to descend, sinking gently back toward the cleared soil. As it lowered, the tiny mushrooms' glow dimmed a little, as if their task was nearly done. The larger mushrooms leaned in one last time, a collective bow. Their caps dipped, their stems curved. It was not an ending that felt sad. It was an ending that felt complete, like the final note of a lullaby fading into silence. The mist shape touched the soil and began to dissolve, curling back into the earth as if returning home. The cleared circle slowly filled again, leaves sliding back, needles settling, moss fluffing itself as though nothing had happened, yet something remained. a softness in the air, a warmth in the soil, a sense that the glade had been tended not with hands, but with gentle attention. The mushrooms became still again, just mushrooms once more to any casual eye. Their glow faded to faint embers barely there. Their caps stopped swaying. Their stems straightened into quiet patience. The fox's eyes closed and stayed closed. Its breathing was deep, and even now the kind of sleep that is both light and safe. The rabbit, too, leaned slightly to one side, drifting into its own doze. Ears relaxed. The bird on the branch slept without shifting. The forest held them all. Above, the moon continued its slow journey, bright and calm. The stars watched quietly. The stream whispered, steady and soothing, like a voice reading a bedtime story to itself. And somewhere deep beneath the soil, the mycelium rested, its threads still connected, still carrying the memory of the dance, ready to hum again on another gentle night. Now the glade is quiet, and the quiet feels like a blanket being drawn up to your chin. The air is soft, the light is dim, the world has done what it needed to do, and it's safe to let it go. Breath moves in and out, slow and natural, like a tide that doesn't have to reach anywhere in particular. Thoughts can drift like leaves on dark water, floating past without needing attention. The mushrooms are still. The fox sleeps. The rabbit sleeps. The bird sleeps. The trees stand in peaceful guard, and the moon watches with a gentle silver gaze. Let your own body follow that same simple rhythm of rest. Nothing to solve, nothing to plan, only the quiet, only the steady comfort of the night. If any last bit of the day lingers, imagine it dissolving into the earth, becoming part of that hidden web of roots and threads, held safely below, no longer yours to carry. The forest glade fades softly into darkness, and the darkness is kind. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.